Hi, and welcome back to Small Caps. I'm your host, Jess Holland, and today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the MD and CEO of CGN Resources, Mr. Stan Wholley. So CGN Resources is actually a pre-IPO exploration company that's targeting the discovery of copper and nickel and other strategic metals in West Arunta. Is that how you say it, Stan? In Oregon.
That's how I say it.
Okay, perfect. So the proposed ticker code for the company is CGR. Welcome, Stan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for making the time, Jess. Look forward to telling you about the project.
Yeah, perfect. Let's delve straight in. So now, Stan, the company's just launched a $10 million IPO and has an indicative listing date of the 12th of October. Can you please give our audience sort of a bit of a background on your IPO and intended listing on the ASX?
Sure. So CGN Resources has been, a privately run exploration company for the last 10 years. And over that period, we've gathered lots of information and pulled it all together, and always saw that at some point in the company we would list it. In early July, we met up with our joint lead managers, Oracle Capital and 708 Capital, and organised a mandate to push it forward into a listing. They really liked the story. They thought it sort of resonated with sort of recent work by some of our neighbours in that area. The mix of metals being copper, sort of nickel and specialty metals, it's a good mix for listing. It's not the greatest market, I won't lie, but we do think we've got an excellent asset. And so we pushed really hard to get it done in the shortest time possible, and we've been very successful at that. We did all the sort of compliance work and did all that in about as fast a time as you can do it. Opened the prospectus on the 1st of September with the hope of raising between 8 and 10 million. Closed it 2 weeks later, oversubscribed at 10. So the lead managers and the CGN board did a really great job in raising those funds, and now we're just doing the last bits of sort of compliance with the ASX. We're expecting a conditional admission letter any day now, and if that comes then we'll be looking to list on or around the 12th of October, which will be very exciting.
Wow, Stan. Okay, so that is phenomenal in terms of time frame, but also the amount of capital that you've been able to secure through your IPO. So we know that your team can, execute on the corporate front. Let's talk a bit about your project. So your Webb's project, I'm curious, was originally conceived as being prospective for diamonds. What has motivated the company to sort of pivot its exploration focus to the search of large magmatic mineral systems last year?
Yeah, look, the diamond guy, as I said, we've been operating sort of for 10 years, really got on the ground with the first company in that neck of the woods to get an access agreement with the Jamu, which gave us we were a first mover there. And the guys that started it were diamond experts. They recognised that the area was, quite prospective for diamonds in kimberlites. But the same reason that the kimberlites are there is the same reason that there's potential for large other magmatic systems. And so they went through the process of the diamond exploration, and I'd say they were technically very successful. They found Australia's largest kimberlite field, raised $6 million privately, and spent that pretty much all on exploration. Drilled about 50 of them, and sadly didn't find any diamonds in those first 50. But they also did a bunch of detailed geophysics. So we had gravity surveys, we had high resolution mag surveys. There was a little bit of EM. We had drilled 80 drill holes, and so there ended up at the end of that process a very good exploration database, you'd call it. And so you move forward to about 2018, and they tried to list it, and the market wasn't great. I guess there wasn't enough support for a pure diamond story. And around that same time, there'd been quite a lot of research put out by Geoscience Australia, GSWA, and it certainly highlighted the fact that that whole Arunta block and the West Arunta is highly prospective for big magmatic systems, IOCGs particularly, but also nickel. And it was around that time the technical team sort of thought, well, maybe we should take our diamond glasses off and have a look at what else is in this in the data package. And when they did that, there was all kinds of really interesting things. There was, 14 holes with what you would say is highly anomalous copper values. When I say highly anomalous, like 10 times background, and a couple of drill holes above, the highest result is a couple of meters at sort of 0.2% copper. We also found nickel intercepts over 30 meters, although only partially sampled, a couple of meters at above 1% nickel, and in a 30-meter zone above 0.5% nickel. And same with the rare earths. We found, and we didn't really look for the rare earths until WA1. One of our neighbours had made a pretty significant discovery up there. And when we went back and looked through it, we found a 37-metre intercept sort of at about 0.4% total rare earths, maxing out at sort of 0.8, which highly anomalous and very interesting, and they occur next to really interesting geophysical features. So it was really good geoscience. It was a long answer, I suppose, but good geoscience and just a change in focus, really, and looking for what other value could be created from the tenements. And sort of over the next couple of years, it sort of slowed down a bit with COVID there. It made it a bit harder to get on the ground, but it did give us time to really pore over the data. And it was about, I got involved as the chairman originally in a sort of early 21. And really it was then that I sort of, using my geology and some of my network in geology, sort of said, look, why don't I give this data to some experts in the field of IOCG and of nickel and see if they can come up with something. And they did. Like, they all said, yeah, look, these are all very interesting targets. And so we went and did some extra work, some airborne gravity to refine those targets. And that's really brought us to the selection of targets that we have in the IPO, which are 6 high priority targets. There's probably another 6 to 10 lower priority targets that just need a bit more work. So there's still a lot of work to do there, but it's exciting work.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Stan. Just let's hone in on some of those targets, because obviously you guys have already done quite a lot of the groundwork in terms of your geophysics, and then you've already done a little bit of drilling as well. So you've completely pivoted, but it's looking very prospective and very exciting. But 2 targets I'm quite interested to learn a little bit more about, which you've identified within the Webb project, is the Shep nickel and the Haiti. Do you say Haiti? Rare earths.
Hathi.
Okay, Hathi.
Yeah.
So Shep and Hathi. So yeah, I want to understand a little bit more about those 2 targets.
Yeah, I sort of touched on them in my previous answer. Again, I would say we did most of our work looking for IOCGs, and we've got 4 good IOCG targets, which will be our first test. But as part of that, I guess, regional relook at all the data, Shep and Hathi stood out because it's, well, really anomalous geochemistry. The Shep target, it's hard to explain away, sort of plus 1% nickel, but the nickel also comes with highly anomalous vanadium, chromium, copper, a little bit of uranium, like elevated, not sort of dangerous or economic levels, but all of those minerals suggest that it is probably related to some kind of magmatic source rather than just being a sort of an oxide type deposit. And when we positioned that, interestingly, as is often the case in geology, the drill hole that made this discovery was actually targeting kimberlite and was drilled in the wrong spot. So it missed the kimberlite entirely, but it hit this. And it's coincident with a very interesting magnetic feature, which looks like it could be some kind of sill, a mafic or ultramafic sill. which brings into play a sulphide source for those. And there is also elevated sulfur in the intercepts as well. So we've sort of designed first pass programs to go and look at those. We won't get to those till next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to drill those RC and we'll have a good idea. Hopefully we can replicate that first result and expand it.
Yeah, thanks.
And Hathie's a bit the same. Like it was drilled into a kimberlite, but the kimberlites, there's a couple of kimberlites out there. There's three that are, I'll say, sort of 500 metres apart. So not very far apart in a project of that size. The middle one intercepted the kimberlite at its appropriate depth, but it also had like these very high rare earths in it. And we didn't really notice that when they were looking for diamonds. But when we came back and did look, it was like, well, why is this one so different to the other ones? And the two holes, 500 metres, one to the east and one to the west, have a little bit of rare earths in them, but nowhere near as much. And the kimberlite source is likely the same. So you say, why is that? And then again, when we looked at the geophysics, it sits right on the edge of a really interesting sort of dike-like feature that looks like it might be emanating from a deep-seated magmatic feature intrusive. And given WA1's success just to our north, finding carbonatites, we were like, well, that could easily be a carbonatite. It has a very similar signature. You often get dikes coming off carbonatites. The geochemistry of the actual drill hole is kind of more like a carbonatite than it is a kimberlite. So we've, again, designed programs to go and test that dike, and it's a very interesting target. And again, that'll be tested in next year's programs.
Amazing. Okay, so now talking about next year's programs, can you give our small caps audience a bit of an idea around the company's plans for exploration and maybe even potential future development for the Webb project in particular in the next sort of 6, 12, 24 months?
Yep. So we were a private company and we were looking to stay private. If we go back to sort of May even, we were planning to raise money and go and drill some targets, one at Tantor and one at Surus. They're both IOCG targets, large, very excellent looking IOCG targets. And we had sought EIS funding for those, Exploration Incentive Scheme funding from the West Australian government, and received that. So we had like $400,000 of grant funding to go and drill two deep and really exciting first pass test holes into these large gravity features. And so we kicked along all that, all the permitting and everything that goes along with that. And then when we decided to list, we said, well, if we're going to list, let's try and drill those two holes around the time we list. So we actually have drill rigs turning up on site perhaps tomorrow. It's a long drive from down here in Perth up to there, but we're expecting it on site tomorrow. There'll be a bit of camp building required, a little bit of some infrastructure holes, a water bore to be drilled, and various other things. But we will be pretty much commenced our first drill hole at the time we list. So it'll be very exciting for us and our shareholders, and hopefully all new shareholders. You always go into these things with very high hopes. But what I will say is, like, these are the first real deep hole tests, so it's going to give us a bunch of information anyway. Depending on the results of those holes will really depend on the focus of our drilling for next year. But what we do have planned and permitted is a bunch of drill holes and geophysical surveys across all of our targets to take them to the next sort of stage. So early in the new year, we do have a bit of a weather window. It's pretty hard to get out there. It's pretty hot and prone to rain from pretty much November through till March, end of March. So we try not to do our programs in that time. It's not to say you can't, but it's just higher risk, so we tend not to do it. So around that March time, we'll go out and do some new geophysics to just refine the targets for the next stages of drilling across all of the targets, different ones. We've got some IP for the IOCGs. We've got some EM for the nickel at Shep, and We'll probably do some gravity over the Hathi target. That'll all happen March, April, and then we'll look to get the rigs back out there in May probably and really go hard at it. That said, if one or both of these holes at Surus or Tantor come in, then we will get the drill rigs out there as soon as we can early in the year and start peppering those with as many holes as we have to really try and define what we've discovered there. So that's pretty much the plan. I think in junior exploration, you need to be pretty flexible, iterative, and you need to have enough good plans in place so you can move your resources where they are going to get the best bang for their buck. Thankfully, we go into this with an amazing war chest for exploration with $10 million in the bank. We're a small company. We've always been a private company, so we've always been very disciplined in the way we do our exploration. We're a geoscience-focused company, so we like to spend our money on good geoscience rather than corporate overhead or, too much flashy presentation work. You'll see a bit of that, but really we want to spend our money where it's going to create value for shareholders, and that's doing exploration.
No, that sounds really good, Stan. Now, you've done all of this really great groundwork already, and it's so interesting that that you're going to start drilling before actually listing on the ASX, which is quite unusual, I would say, for a junior. So the company must have quite a level of confidence to be able to do that. So let's talk about a little bit about your board and the experience that they bring to the table.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate in that regard to have a really exceptionally qualified board. When you're a small team, having people that are really good at what they do makes a huge difference to the outcomes. So our chairman, Daryl Harris, is a very seasoned mining industry executive and director. He comes with, I don't know, probably 35, maybe even 40 years of experience. He's a metallurgist, but and still is actively in that sort of technical role for Outotec. But he is also a very experienced company director. He's been a chairman before, he's been a managing director before, he's been a non-executive director before. So he's sort of familiar with all the aspects that are required from a board. And he's also been involved with projects that have sort of been in the exploration phase. He's seen them through the development phase and sold them in some cases, and moved them on and pivoted in other cases. So I guess a broad sense, and that's international experience as well, not just here in Australia. Not that that really concerns us for now. And Grant Mooney, who is our non-executive director and our company secretary, is a really experienced guy. He currently sits, I think, on 3 other boards, and some of those are resource focused. So he's on the Talga board, which I'm not sure how familiar you are with that story, but really interesting graphite project in Sweden. It's been very successful. I think they've done a great job, and he's sort of seen that through from an exploration concept through to now, going into production. So it's good, and not just that, he's probably been involved in, I don't know how many, but it would be 20 to 30 IPOs as a company secretary. So he knows the corporate governance inside out, which is great. Again, I think we all provide sort of a different set of skills, and I'm a geologist by background. I've got 30 years experience in exploration and development and mining and consulting. And so I kind of bring the technical know-how to speak to the actual exploration. What's the good strategy to where we're going to get bang for our buck? What should we be testing? I also bring a great network. I spent a lot of time as a consultant, global. So I have a great network of sort of advisors that I can call on, and I regularly do to get sort of expert opinion on the work we're doing. And so with a board of just the 3 of us, a couple of really good advisors, the team will grow as we list, but right now it's a really strong team for delivering. And I think our success to date, like starting the IPO process in July, pushing through all of that compliance and corporate stuff, doing the raising, hitting the maximum in a really crap market, I think says a lot about our joint lead managers and our board's ability to deliver on what we said we're going to deliver on.
Yeah, brilliant, Stan. I mean, you've got 3 board members, but collectively you've got more than 70 years of, combined experience across the corporate side, your technical, across the development cycle.
Yeah. Probably closer to 100 years of experience. We're getting a bit old.
I didn't want to be rude.
Yeah.
No, that's, amazing. So yeah, and fantastic. The fact that you guys have been able to deliver and execute already, obviously you have to still list, but you've already, had an oversubscribed $10 million IPO in a market where liquidity is, not great, as we know. It's a huge testament to your team already. So really looking forward to seeing how you guys go with the actual exploration and potential future development side of things.
Yeah. Well, us too. And I guess coming back, doing the drill holes as we list, we already had it in play, and we sort of set that really aggressive timeline to have it listed. We'd hoped that it would be on the, early October, and we've managed to achieve that. In truth, it does make me a bit nervous, like having drill holes turning as we list. It's an excellent, it could be a bit binary, the result, depend on how they go. But what I would say is we are here to do exploration. There's no use shying away from it. We want to test these really exceptional targets. And so that's what we're going to do. So we don't see it as super high risk. It's just part of our strategy to start the test work. So let's just get on and do it is I guess, our board's motto.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's about you've secured the funds, and you're going to do what you say you're going to do, is put the money in the ground, drill some holes. The outcome is out of your control, but you've obviously done a lot of the groundwork. And just shifting sort of and talking about something else that is a little bit out of your control is kind of the macroeconomic environment. Just want to understand a little bit of, your thoughts around the nickel and rare earth elements markets, and what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, look, I think they're both really good markets to be in. Look, I would say, CGN stands for copper, gold, and nickel. And we chose those because for a couple of reasons. One, there's pretty much always a market for them. It's a simple, easy to understand market. I think you sort of mentioned nickel and rare earths in particular. Like copper is also really important. I think all 3 of them are really important to, a renewable transition or just a decarbonisation transition. All 3 of the metals we're chasing are incredibly important for different reasons. Like copper is in short-term structural supply. It is used probably more than any of the other metals for winding motors, for, electrification cabling, all of that. So copper, I think, is also in a great position. Nickel for the same thing. I mean, nickel is getting used more and more in batteries for EVs, or lithium batteries in general. So I can, and it depends where you get your information, but like usage in batteries is increasing as a percentage of the battery, but also the number of batteries being produced is increasing. And people are saying like the market for nickel may well increase by 50% by 2050. 2030, I think even.
Yep.
So there's a huge upside potential there. And same, nickel is not, there are some excellent nickel projects around, but I think if we could find a nickel sulphide deposit, it would be exceptional and great for our company. And I think it would be an easy sell. Rare earths, look, China has controlled that market for a long time, but you've seen that market dominance really slip away over the last, probably 5 years, really. You go back 10, it was 95% of the market. I think they're now sitting at, somewhere between 60 and 70% of the market. Australia's stepped in there quite a bit. The US has stepped in there. And I think it's a lot about people wanting to diversify away from what is seen as China as geopolitical risk. And I think that's valid, like China has controlled that market and, stopped shipping it to Japan a few years ago. and people don't like that in their supply chain. And I think Australia, as a tier one jurisdiction, can always demonstrate like really exceptional quality on the supply chain. It's done transparently. It's done, to world's best practice mining. There's a lot of reasons to like it, and I think we'll see that. There's a lot of people out looking, so there'll definitely be more projects outside of China. There's a couple of big ones coming on stream in Australia in the next little while. But and I think the rare earths market is tipped to increase. I think it's 500% over the next decade. So you'd have to say that puts a lot of upward pressure on pricing. So we're pretty comfortable with all three of those. Is the short answer to that question. But it is the vagaries of the market.
Yep.
The world is not in a growth mode at the moment. It's kind of either shrinking or a bit stagnant. So, I think it actually works to our timeline pretty well. It gives us a year or so to really, punch on, find some stuff, and then hopefully in a couple of years when we're out there actively, I dream of this, raising money to start developing our mines. It's in a much more buoyant market. So I think it's all good.
More, Stan. I think, you guys are well funded. You've got 10 million in the bank. Most juniors don't raise that amount. If they're lucky, they do sort of 5 million IPO. But you guys are a lot more developed. You're obviously in, I shouldn't say developed, you're more further advanced, sort of more brownfields projects.
Yeah.
And more than that, you're in a great jurisdiction.
The geology is good as well, right? Like it's not just, it's like, the geology of the area is really good. We haven't really sort of talked about it, but WA1 and Encounter have made significant discoveries there, and I won't lie, that certainly has helped with our story. Having people making discoveries of large magmatic systems just up the road in an area that's tipped to be pretty hot has helped us get our company listed. But equally, we've got a major land holding, which in its own right is very attractive and ripe for testing.
Yeah. So you've got, I was going to say the point that I was trying to make was the fact that you're in, three of the sort of market darling kind of commodities at the moment. You've got rare earths, you've got nickel, copper, they're all, the fundamentals are there. So regardless of whether the market at the moment isn't kind of in a growth state, as you mentioned, the fundamentals are there. You're cashed up, the company's cashed up, and you're just going to keep doing what you're doing in terms of the exploration work to hopefully make discoveries to fill that demand supply gap that is looming for the net zero decarbonisation in 2035. So very exciting.
You hit any one of those with a decent deposit, and you're right. It'll make us getting our next tranche of funding much easier. It will, I'm pretty sure, excite the market. Just, it's quite an exciting jurisdiction anyway at the moment. So if we have a discovery as well, it will make it red hot. And IGO is a sort of a neighbour out to the east. They're doing quite a bit of work on theirs and had success. I guess it's less impactful inside their business because they're a much bigger business. And Rio Tinto has a major ground package to our west, which they've committed $50 million to explore over the next, I'm not sure what the time period is, but 5 to 6 years via JV and in their own right. So I think you'll see lots of, you probably won't see anything come out of Rio. They tend not to disclose what they're up to in a as transparent way as a junior explorer has to. It doesn't make the materiality threshold for them, but IGO, I know they're going to be doing work there this year. WA1 and Encounter are busy there at the moment. I talk to those guys pretty regularly, and they're not planning to slow down until as late as possible in the season. So we'll see lots of results coming out of the region over the next few months, and hopefully some of those are ours.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well, some of them will be ours.
Yes, lots of activity, lots of great neurology, great commodity. Now, I'm not going to steal your thunder. One last question for you, Stan, and that is, can you leave our small cap audience with 2 or 3 very brief reasons why you think that this company is potentially a good investment for them?
Look, I think we've already done a great deal of the exploration work required to generate high quality targets. And so we've got 6 high quality targets. That gives us a lot of diversity to actually go and test. And I think we'll get results from one or all of them to some extent, right? Like I'm quite confident in the quality of our targets. You never know until you test them. But I would say quality of targets is one thing. The other thing is we are already well funded, and we're going to be able to really deliver on our exploration strategy easily for 2 years. There's not many exploration companies that get that kind of luxury to be able to just continually go and do good work over a period of time, and it allows us to be flexible for other opportunities as well, should they come our way. It's a
Brilliant.
other projects may be in our future, but we don't know. And I would say, thirdly, we've got a really strong team, and I think no great thing was ever done outside of a really strong team. I think teams are what really create excellence and what creates success. You can't do it as individuals generally. And so we've assembled like a strong board team. I can tell you I've got a number of options for sort of geological team members to join us. I'm just waiting to sort of push the button on those. And so watch this space for some more news pretty soon, I hope. And even our advisors, we've got great advisors beyond, the team that'll be sort of employees. So good team, good location, good projects, good targets.
Brilliant. Love it. Stan, I've really, really enjoyed our discussion. Thank you so much for joining us on Small Caps today. All the best with, the last leg of your IPO, and really looking forward to watching CGN light up the ASX boards next month.
Well, me too. That's the thing that I can't wait to see. So get on board, investors.
Brilliant. Take care, Stan.
All right. Thanks. See you, Jess.